We'll
Yeah, I just want to make some clarifying statements.
We'll now call the special budget work session to order from Pascagoula School Board of Trustees. Okay, Mr. Dobbs, you have the agenda. Do you have anything to add to that agenda?
I'm not.
Okay. Does any board member have anything to add on the budget session? Okay, we have four members present and one absent for the time being, Mr. Irving, should be in a little later. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, Mr. Adolphus.
Okay, just a few clarifying statements for the board. We've been doing this process now. We're going to our 15th year with the President Administration. During the course of that time, today will be a general overview of budget, and it's very easy for you guys to read. It's also an opportunity for the board to ask questions about it. But the thing that I get from this meeting here is typically the board has some ideas that they would like to impart that they think are special for projects, facility needs, things that you may see that we're not seeing. So please, whenever you get to your part, after Ms. Green goes through the presentation, let us know, what are some of your goals for this next school year, things we can do to improve the district. The other point is we have purposefully kept our fund balance in very good shape. There are some projects that we're going to try to do this upcoming year, with the primary project being the Gautier High School roof. We also intend to have a balanced budget, and that means that if we have to request that the board let us use some fund balance in order for that to happen. If it appears we have a trend of loss of student numbers, any of those things, and during the course of this year we will begin implementing a plan to reduce staff in different places and cut some of those numbers. But leading into this year, for board members who may not have been on the board at the time, this has been our strategy for this upcoming year. There's one court case out there right now from the Southern Poverty Law Center at the state level that could impact our school district. It's regarding charter schools in Jackson and the use of its schools in Section 206. So we just need to keep an eye on that. That case will be heard on the 17th and 18th. And Kelly, from our experience, it's a 6 to 8 month period before the court releases their finding on it. The other thing is, this was not intended to go to oral arguments, and something changed, so we're curious to know why it's now being argued before the court with oral arguments, because before they were just going to take all the data and look through it, and now they're going to actually have 2 days of testimony. So that's just some general overview things, and at any point I have staff here to answer any questions of the staff that's here. But it's just a general overview of budget today. Okay? Screen?
Okay. I usually preface when I do a presentation that y'all usually getting presented by educators that are teachers by trade. I'm an accountant, so not my strongest suit. If I say something that needs more clarification, if I go through something too quickly, please stop me. I'll be glad to keep on going through it till I say the right words to make sure we're all on the same page. Of course, you guys know who you are. I won't go over that. I usually put some of these slides in case we have public members that are here. One thing though that is crucial that sometimes we forget and sometimes we get distracted by different things and that go on in the day-to-day. But at the end of the day, our mission is, and I'm going to read it to you, it's at the end of the slide, educating tomorrow's college and career-ready students in our inclusive innovation nation. So whenever we're talking budget, when we've started talking in probably December and January, just having small conversations on goals and things that we like to do, but we do keep this in mind when we're making, and also the strategic plan. So the mission statement is the most critical thing, and that's what leads us. Purpose of the budget, as you guys know, is just a planning tool. At this point in time, we're predicting what the year's going to look like, when it comes to personnel, when it comes to materials, when it comes to facility needs. We do our very vehicle needs, buses, that type thing. So again, it's just a tool. At this moment, we're doing our very best to plan and to make sure we have the funds and the budget set up to have a productive school year next year. Budget calendar. You know, as some of us lived through the debacle of a couple years ago, we had a pretty set budget on calendar when we want to get things done and when we need to get things done in order to have everything to the city by the August 15th deadline. So for that to take place, we have to have a budget hearing, and we will approve the budget in August. I have some tentative dates I just kind of laid out based on advertising. If those look good to you, we can move forward. If there's some issues there with conflict, I can revise it some. You know, Mr. Johnson, I was given your date, so we were able to work around those. So
Thank you.
I appreciate you giving us, because that really helps knowing.
I will be gone 27th, 28th, and 29th.
Of June. Okay. Well, we'll have to look at that. We need to have it prior to June 30. So if we maybe need to back it up to the 26th.
Yeah, that would work.
But yeah, we'll definitely look into that, because like as many people here, of course, as we can. The highlights for the next school year. Of course, the Performing Arts Center will be completed. Along with the Performing Arts Center, there's going to be some additional personnel requirements for that facility. You know, we budgeted a arts coordinator. We didn't fill those. It'll probably be that position. Will be something similar that will help with the facilitating of scheduling, the agreements, the money collection, that type thing, being there to actually work the events when we have outside organizations there. In addition, we'll have a custodian that will probably be full-time. That's such a large facility. Maybe times when they're not needed, they could maybe go to PHS and help them. But those will be two recurring personnel costs that will also go along with the Performing Arts Center. Of course, Mr. Rodolfich mentioned the roof replacement at Gautier High School, which will be a next summer type project. The CCTI renovations on the restrooms, you guys approved that bid, I believe. So we'll move towards that, and that will be completed in 2020. Also, the welding shop will be completed, and we had a conversation with Mr. Harbell today about painting, and we approved the bids for the equipment and the booths. According to Wesco, they're going to be in by the end of the month, which is even quicker than what we anticipated. So we're looking like we're on track for that project, which is really exciting. And also through Child Nutrition Funds, they're going to replace the furniture in the cafeteria at PHS. They redid Gautier's last year, and they're really pretty neat looking. So that's something else that will be done.
There are two other projects. They have already stripped both floors. They're putting in new goals at both high school gyms and the new bleachers, which were approved by the board earlier this year. That'll be completed this summer. We're working on the exterior of the welding shop to put a good base outside of there, so we're not tracking welding dust in and out. The facility will deteriorate over in just a short period of time if we don't do that work. And we're also working on a canopy for the car riders at Singing River Academy in the back, and a new sidewalk with a covered space so teachers and children don't get wet while they're putting children in cars or unloading children from cars. So those are a few other projects that are on there as well, and we'll give you that updated, completed list whenever it's finished. And again, guys, I just want to make sure when you're out in the public and you're talking to people about what are we doing, where are we spending our money, it is direct correlation to our strategic plan that was written by 250 members of this community. Some of you were part of that strategic plan, but it always works back to our strategic plan. We have 2 years left on the plan. We have 60% of the plan completed. Okay.
Let's talk about personnel, because of course, salary and benefits make up anywhere from 75, yes, sir?
Before we move to personnel, I assume the Performing Arts Center, which I guess is going to come online maybe around December or so, but I assume it's going to have a pretty large utility bill and stuff. And so what are y'all anticipating out of just AC and everything else the utility bill is going to be?
I will look at the FIC and see what it's generating. And it still won't even probably touch the cost of the Performing Arts Center, but that'll kind of be my guideline that I go and look at first and see what it costs to. And we actually use that facility a lot too. It stays pretty clean. It's an expensive one to to cool off. So I will look there and just kind of see what we're running. And
Okay, and just kind of plug in a comparable number, maybe increase it some.
Right.
For-
Well, and two, our insurance is going to go up, but all those things will be taken into account on those other different line items.
But this really, I guess it could be a little small part of the budget, but Mr. Dawkins, you and I talked about one time, I said at the CCTI, they never had any, mold and mildew problems until they adjusted the air conditioner at night or and left it in the summer. When it was kept at a constant temperature, there was never any problem there. And for I guess 20-something years, and then we got into the energy savings and all. They would cut it off for the weekend, change it, and that really was a problem. Of course, that could increase the power bill on it. So I guess it would be a budget thing.
And the other thing that we're going to have to look at as a board is our current policy as it relates to use facilities. This facility is going to be a multi-million-dollar high-tech facility, and we have to make sure that we have the proper compensation whenever we let people use it for large-scale events that cover multiple days. We also need to have our people there to monitor what's going on, including the payment of a technician through those fees. So I just think we need to be thinking about that for dance. They're still going to come out way ahead, but we can't not collect for those positions.
Yes.
And that'll have to be built into a new policy for use facilities.
Any other questions concerning this? Personnel. Personnel makes up anywhere between 75% and 80% of our budget. So at the end of the day, once we get the personnel and the payroll stuff situated, the operating piece of the budget is not the biggest part. As it's been well publicized for the last 6-8 months, the teacher pay raise was approved by the legislature. It was $1,500 across the board per step for teachers and also for the teacher assistants. And we kind of questioned some of those things on the teacher assistant, what they exactly meant, and they meant for a $1,500 per assistant increase. And so we have built those into the salary schedules. And there's also MDE funding that's going to support the pay raise for the teachers and the assistants. Again, you probably saw in the paper there was kind of some confusion with some school districts not thinking that all their teachers were being funded properly. They sent us spreadsheets, and myself, my human resource manager, looked at it, and we were funded for our teachers. It has to do with MSIS and how they were coded. We have a great staff that works on MSIS, so our stuff was in good shape. So we didn't have any issues there.
Well, what about on the teacher pay rate? What's that going to cost us on retirement? If we have to pay that, then we don't get any funds for that.
They funded the pay raise and the associated benefits with the pay raise.
Great.
So the FICA and the retirement.
Great.
So now let's see what happens next year. But this year we're in good shape. Another thing I'd like to speak with you about, and a recommendation, something I've talked with Mr. Rodolfich about, is right now our salary schedules for non-certified. So that's everybody from maintenance to finance to secretaries. At step 17, it stops. So once you've gotten to step 17, it doesn't matter if you're here another 5 or 8 years, you stay in the same place. And it doesn't give employees incentive to stay when we're not able to give raises every year, unfortunately. Sometimes we can afford it, sometimes we can't. But I would like to extend it from 17 to 25. That way, the way I'm looking at it is if you're at 17, and even if you've got 26 years of experience, you're going to 18. But it gives incentive for people to stay. It will help with morale. It's pretty tough when you work 3 and 4 years in a row and your check doesn't go up or it actually goes down if there's insurance increases, that type thing. So I think that's a good idea for our employees. I think like I said, it would be good for morale and good for employees that are, because I use Eva's mom as an example all the time. She was a critical part to the finance office, but she'd been at 17, and when you start looking at retirement and other situations, and it was a really tough loss when she left. So anyway, I'd like to talk to you guys and see how you feel about that.
But what's the dollar figure potential for implementing that? Because that would just be a district-wide funding, right? I mean, we wouldn't really get any.
Right, no, these are locally paid individuals.
Right.
Yeah, and MADP, of course, pays for our teachers, but this would be
Over and above.
everybody else.
Right, this would be over and above to make sure that they're getting additional raises when they kind of max out.
Correct.
MAP. So what?
Because you're right, of our 1,400 roughly employees, half of them are teachers, half of them are not teachers. So we're looking at almost half of our staff that would fall into this situation. So what it would cost us would be the same as one step. So it wouldn't be a huge increase implementing that piece of it. Because they're, when I looked at I didn't look at assistants at this point because they were getting this pay raise, but when I looked at everybody else, just that one step for the employees that aren't currently getting a step, it would have been like $31,000.
For the entire district.
For the ones that are on 17.
Right.
We have a lot, the other employees are anywhere from step 0 to 17, so,
Right.
but this would be the ones that have been sitting at 17 that would,
Go to 18.
correct.
And then next year, they could potentially go to 19.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So it would be a recurring cost if we kind of started doing this.
Correct.
But you're really only looking at maybe $35,000 a year.
Correct. Because we don't have very many employees that are there. We have a handful, but
Okay.
it's not. Because the other part too is when people come into the district, most of the time they start on 0, unless they come in with a lot of experience, and they might start at 5. But 5 is the max that you can start at. So.
And just to clarify, so that $1,500 pay raise that was implemented by the legislature, we're not going to have to fund any portion of that, at least for the first year?
That is correct.
Retirement, nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yep. We have our MAP allocation, and then we have an additional allocation for the pay raise. So usually they kind of just try to lump it all together, and you really don't know what's what. But this year, they actually gave us 2 numbers. This is your MAP. This is what's going to cover the teacher pay raise. So, again, with the pay raise to the teacher assistants, you have to keep in mind that that was mandated. Our assistants start off 13.8, 13.5, somewhere in there, and it goes on up to about 22, depending. There's 2 different assistant scales. So a $1,500 raise was a significant increase. It was a 12 and 13% for some of our employees. And because of that, it kind of got some of the other scales out of whack when you look at responsibility level. Again, we haven't done an increase to the non-certified scale in about 4 years. Usually whenever there's a teacher pay raise, it's an opportunity to fund a pay raise for the other employees. As you guys know, this place would shut down without that other half. Don't get me wrong, those teachers are critical every single day in those classrooms, but it's everybody else spokes that keep those wheels going so the teachers can be in there. So again, but as you see in parentheses, that's going to be dependent on local assessment. What our numbers come in, what it looks like if we've had an increase, decrease. For the last few years, we've had a decrease in our local assessment. If it's a significant, then we're not going to be able to do the 3%. We might not be able to do anything. It might be a 1%. We still have to do something, but it might not be the full 3%. And again, I'll talk about the next on the director administrator scale. On the principal, assistant principal, CTL scale, the base salary comes off the teacher salary schedule. So whenever there's an increase to the teacher salary schedule, it increased the base according to the approved salary scale. And it was about a 2.5 to 2.8 depending on where the principal was in their salary amount. So, looking at that, just to kind of keep, again, the responsibility level and having to keep salaries in check. Again, we looked at doing that, again, depending on the assessment. Because if we, again, like Mr. Rodolphus said in the beginning, from the very beginning, it was we are not going to increase millage at all, and we're going to live within our means. So until we know what's going on locally, we'll come back and talk to you hopefully later in June. Maybe it might even be July before we start getting some of that information. When I went to the city, went to City Hall a couple weeks ago to get our ad valorem check, the lady that I had been working with was leaving. It was her last day. And when I spoke to her about who's going to be my contact person getting information, she pretty much said, I don't know, which makes me very uneasy. Because a couple years ago, Mr. Marks and Mr. Buchanan and I went and met with the tax assessor. And he told us, you won't see a significant change in your total assessment. And then when it came down, we had a $60-something million decrease. So that makes me very uneasy, just knowing that with all the changing in the accounting department in City Hall, I'm not quite sure how accurate our number's going to be. I think I read Mr. Sesson sent it to me where they're hired a CPA firm to come in and do some consulting work to help guide them through this process. So maybe it won't be a problem at all. But again, usually we would start getting those numbers late June, early July.
And just so, board, you understand that there's a discipline to where that says 3%, we won't generalize a 3% increase. If it is proportionate to the employee pay scale for teachers, then it will be that 2.7, 2.8, wherever that falls out, we will match that to match what our scale says. So 3% is a general number, but we're specifically looking at what's the amount of increase based on that increase for teachers. We won't go beyond that. We'll go right to it.
Well, we said during the budget work session we were going to look at the secondary schools and go the pay according to the enrollment in the schools. Where do we stand on that? Have we looked at that anymore?
Well, that creates a difficult circumstance because you have some decreased enrollments and you have principals who have been in those same schools for before those enrollments started to decline, so we could get into a situation of non-renewal if we have to adjust salaries based on existing employees. Is that correct, Kelly?
I mean, if it's a demotion or a significant decrease in pay, you might have to.
Well, what I would say is if the person has that job and say goes from a 5A to a 4A school, as long as they're in that job, they keep the salary for that responsibility factor. I wouldn't be for cutting anybody's salary by no means.
Yeah, we can look at that as a future hire deal, but that's where we've been with it. We have some very high performers that we're able to keep with high experience who has had some reduction in the amount of students that are there. And based on trends, those numbers will go back up. It fluctuates by grade levels. So we got really big classes who move through and then really small classes. It's kind of odd, but that's the way that it runs. If we see a significant decrease over a period of years, and that would be another way to look at it. And Ms. Damon can provide that information when we look at our final numbers.
Has it kind of been standard that we increase 3% director and admin schedule in the same way we increase the salary schedules for teachers? Has that been kind of the standard practice for the last 5-10 years?
I can't speak on 10 years. I haven't been here that long. This is the first time the teachers have gotten significant pay raise since I've been here. I can tell you on the salary schedules for the non-certified staff, I think it's been 4 years since there's been any kind of adjustment to that schedule.
Locally or statewide?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
What about admin? Do we do a general increase every year?
Last year, back to what Mr. Bax was saying, we changed that salary scale where used to it was, high school principal, this responsibility factor, middle school, and that's how it's calculated. But we added enrollment numbers in there too, like for the middle school and the high school, because,
Right.
and you could probably speak to this better than I can, but there's a difference in having 800 kids and having 1,200 kids, or having 700. So
but do we do a standard raise pretty much every year?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first year I was here, there was no change to the director admin salary schedule.
Okay.
The first 2 years, actually. This last year was the first year since I've been here that there was an adjustment.
And that's because we adjusted the schedule itself.
Correct.
Right.
And because there hadn't been when Mr. Rodolfich recommended to the board that that schedule be looked
Yeah,
at.
the way that we used to do raises prior to me being here was there was a lump sum of money given to the superintendent to distribute amongst the administrative staff. When I found that, I said, we're going to go to a structured platform so there is no subjectivity in who gets what. So you could say, okay, well, this person's going to get this amount, this person will get this amount. Well, we had to go to some form of formula to make the determination of what people would get whenever there was money available for an increase.
It might do good if, a couple of years back, or maybe more than that, we were given a paper that listed responsibility factors and gave an example of how that was calculated to let Mr.
Sure.
McNeil, and have any of y'all seen that before? Were you on the board?
Yeah, I think it
Good if we get a copy of that, just showing how.
when we redid responsibility factors this previous
And honestly, too, I knew we only had an hour, and so, that's a little bit more in-depth conversation, but we can have a budget work session every single day. Because the more you know, honestly and selfishly, the easier my life is, because the more you guys know and understand it and see where it comes from, then,
Yeah, I would encourage the board to come in whenever they have time and meet with Ms. Grin on any of those technical questions. And we can still do it publicly, where everybody can see it, but just to alleviate some of your concerns about how the pay is structured in the
Call her
district.
10 times a month, mail her 4 times a week. She may exhale sighs when she picks up the phone, but she'll pick it up nonetheless.
Well, for example, she might could just make up a sheet and say, for instance, high school principal at A, they've got certain responsibility factor, and then you figure it out there how they would make, and then, of course, the people could go to any one they wanted to, if they just, any school they wanted to. That might be easier, and you wouldn't tie up your time.
I need that sent out for sure. All right, let's keep moving so we can have some more time at the end for questions. Revenue, let's talk about MAEP, because that's really the only for sure number that we have at this point. Our allocation decreased from fiscal year 19, 427,000. We had a decrease in enrollment, which of course had something to do with it. But I want to make sure you guys understand that MAEP funding is based on ADA, not enrollment. So, the principals, when they've been making their presentations each month, one of their main things is student attendance. And it is critical. Of course, the number one reason we want students here, so they're in the classroom and they're learning and they're improving in their skill set. But financially, it's pretty critical too that they're in their seat, because we get funded for the ones that are here, not the ones that we have on the books. Even though, regardless if they're here or not, we still have to have that teacher in the classroom or that assistant in the classroom. But, so at the very bottom, you'll see the amount that were below full funding. If the legislature fully funded MAEP, we would have an additional $3.1 million, which is a lot of money. A lot of things we could do with that. This right here is the mechanism for calculating our ad valorem requests. We've gone over this before. At this point, some of those numbers can't be filled in. We have to wait till we receive our June settlement, which should be probably in the next week. And then we'll have some pretty firm numbers, and we can really start looking at what our request can be. On the expenditure side, whenever we look at funding the schools, we came up with this formula a couple years ago for equity. It also helps with federal programs, because regardless of if the school is title or not, we still have to fund it just like it is. So this is a way to, like I said, equity among all the schools, plus we're in compliance with ESSA and some of the different federal program requirements. So for K-8 students at $60 a student, you can see it goes up as you go to the secondary level, because it is more expensive to educate a high school child than it is an elementary child. And then on ideas, for every gifted teacher a school has, there's an additional $700 allocated. And then, of course, for kindergarten, it's the same. Debt service, this is something that we probably haven't had to talk about a lot, but here we are now. Of course, we had a 3 mil note, and we use that. That's what's funding the Performing Arts Center, the turf at both football fields. We did a war memorial upgrade. We did some other smaller projects, the marquees at both high schools, College Park's work was used, we used the 3 mil money for that. So the principal and interest payments that we'll make in fiscal year 20, so at the end of June, at June 30 next 2020, we'll have a $15 million balance in the 3 mil note. That is funded through the 3 mil debt service levy that is currently on the books. The next debt issuance we have, of course, is the shortfall note that we had to issue. Our first payment is due in August, so we'll have a full year to collect funds, so we'll have the money to make that payment. We'll have 3 years of that. And again, it's not the greatest thing to have debt, but in this situation, this debt is paid through tax levies. It's not having to come out of operating expense or funds that way that would take away from operating the schools. Let's talk about local assessment a little bit. This is just some information, just informative things, so you guys can know the history for those of you that don't. It's our millage for the last, since 1999 to 2000. It has what we had for operations, our millage for debt, and also our total assessment. Property tax comparison. I know with the millage going up last year, there was a lot of grumbling on how much taxes everybody pays, and it definitely was an increase, not to belittle that at all. But here are the other school districts on the coast, what their tax levies are, their total mills, and we're fourth from the bottom, which we're not the bottom, but we're on the lower side of the mills compared to some of the other school districts on the coast. And that just goes to show too, when you look at, what people are paying for a home and their real property taxes. Again, that's just information just for you to know. And sometimes when you guys are hit up, I know in the grocery store and on Facebook and all that, just maybe some information too to help explain some things if people have questions.
Well, the main thing to look at is if you look at 03 and 04, we were 49.09 mils. Now we're less than that, even with the notes there. We're 48.46. So we're, in 15 years, our millage is actually lower than it was 15 years ago.
Well, the actual, and y'all can correct me mathematically, but because I've watched this since I became superintendent, we were 52.39 mils whenever 2005, in the year 2005. We are at 52.43 mils today. So 15 years later, we're 4/100ths of a mil higher than we were in 2005. What's lost on all this is the amount of money that and let me go to the nobody cares, but it's important that everyone knows that through those tax reductions that we were able to do, through fighting through several court cases, we were able to lower millage, and the net reduction in taxes is in the 48.5 million range. So there's been some, we've paid very close attention to the financial situation. It's just the perfect storm hit us between the city and us when we did our 3 mil note. And would further increase that, because we still would not be at 52.43 if we would not have had to declare the shortfall that we had to declare. We would be 1.3 mils less generally than where we are right now. So we would be paying beneath the number that we were paying in 2005. So when you look at that's just the numbers, that's the hard numbers of it. And that's something that I've paid close attention. That's why we keep that specific a bit of information there, as just to keep you guys where you can refer back to that chart as to where we've been able to do that, because we have had increased money that's come in. Another thing that I'll say, and it's important because some of you have been part of this, we had a effort to divide our tax base years ago that we went to the Supreme Court over. If we had not done what we did when we did it, then you were looking at the loss of 71% of your local tax base being divided amongst the other districts in the county. Without that occurring, the $110 million in capital improvements, the increase in pay for our teachers, none of those things could have ever come to fruition. So I think it's important that we notate that every time that we're in a public meeting to let the public know that we've paid a pretty good cost to try and preserve where our numbers are. And I'm not pleased at 52.43. I would like us to be at 52.39 at the minimum, because in 3 years, we have the potential to drop that to another 1.3 mils down from where it is and go back into the net savings for taxpayers off of that chart.
Historically, have we ever done presentations to the Pascagoula or Gautier City Council on this type of information?
The city council, the members of the city council are well aware of this chart. I've provided that chart to them before.
Yeah, I'm saying on kind of a public forum too, that, I mean, those, I think city council meetings, maybe they get more public play than our school board meetings. I don't know if the public and sometimes politicians, whether they're new or not, are aware of this information.
Yeah, well, it's been shared. That chart's been shared with all of our politicians.
Yeah.
There's even been some disputes about whether or not you pay more for a house today than you did then in taxes, and I think the number's less than $1 today than where it was whenever in 2005 on what people pay for house taxes from the school district. But yeah, we've made this information available at Rotary meetings and Kiwanis meetings, and we have an update, a strategic plan update that this is made available. The mayor and the assistant city manager actually attended our strategic update last year. But the answer is no, we have not presented this to the city council. But it's available if they'd like to review this.
And I know this is kind of like preliminary with budget stuff, but I really want to see, not just with like the Performing Arts Center, the new gym, really want to see like a maintenance schedule. Like how long are those ACs going to last us, and when are we looking at having to replace something like the major systems, the upkeep, like, because that would help, like when we're looking at things we want to do during the year. Well, I'd be real hesitant to do anything major if we knew, okay, all units at the Performing Arts Center probably reached the end of their life and we're going to have to replace all that. Like, those are big costs that I'd like to kind of be able to see. And, you know, things don't last as long as they're warranted for, and things happen, but it would be nice to kind of have a schedule of kind of just what to look for, what to be aware of when we're making decisions about budgeting.
Well, I think we provided every bit of that information with the exception of probably our air conditioning systems, which fluctuate at different schools, and we're not going to replace anything that's functioning.
Right.
I mean, we replace them as they go down, and we have that built into our maintenance budget, but we can pull that information. It's pretty comprehensive on the air systems. But one thing we did do was during the course of all this renovation, we have completely replaced plumbing systems and air systems in schools and made them a lot more energy efficient, a lot better insulated, so there's not as much stress on some of that equipment as before. But we do have some major cooling towers and things like that we've had to replace, but we can get all that listed out for you. No problem.
We've got a little time. If there are any questions or some direction, I appreciate that information for sure for our next meeting.
Are we entertaining like suggested individual line items or things we might want to see? I think I sent an email a while back. I know it's probably, and you can help me, Superintendent Rodolph, it's 3 years ago now coming. We had a pretty tragic incident of a visiting student at one of our football stadiums. And since then, applaud the district and our nursing staff, which always does a fantastic job, but I know we began the process of allocating some AEDs for our campuses at that point in time. I know we still have not completed that endeavor district-wide. And another, I hate to use the word incident, but an opportunity, we'll say, at a field day close to a month ago now, where again, nursing staff, phenomenal job. They happened to be at a different location when that opportunity happened, and they were there within moments. But that was the first question in the office that I heard the nurse ask was, do I need to go get the AED and bring with me? I know the cost is going down on those units, and they're pretty layman to use. If we could possibly look at what campuses do not have those permanently installed.
We have one at every campus.
Yeah.
There's one at every campus.
Is there now? Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the things we comprehensively put AEDs. As a matter of fact, we're in the process now of changing batteries out.
Yeah, every other year you have to
So we
replace
have all that on our
batteries
replacement
on
schedule.
Right.
So that's there. And I think on the high school campuses, we have 2.
I think
For campus.
Debbie has a list, but I think
I know
there's
we
one
have
at
to
the field house.
negotiate.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
one's at the field house, one at the stadium, and then one at the school. But we have a comprehensive coverage of that.
Okay.
And along the line,
Elementary schools, all of them.
All of them have
and
one.
along the lines of the nursing aspect, I know that wasn't part of your question, but we have completed a grant for nurses that will fund nurses for 5 years, 2 nurses, which will get us closer to that number on our strategic plan as well. And having nurses, not at every school, but a lot more coverage of it, and that'll be part of our budget for this year as well. And the other part that you may ask is about the supplements for assistants at the middle schools. Then that's all being worked on as well.
That's in there.
Okay.
So those things have all been addressed.
Okay, great.
And I believe at one of the other work sessions, the proposed athletic changes were in that binder. So, and those are highlighted, the new changes, so you should see it there too. All right, well, if there are any other questions?
Other- yes.
I got some more. All right, give me an idea if you can. Say a student's, they miss high school, one student misses high school for 40 days. What dollars and cents, how much is we out because that student is out for 40 days?
I can get that. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Okay,
but
I mean, just ballpark. I mean, are we talking thousands or are we talking?
Yes. The base student cost ranges anywhere from $4,500 to $6,500, depending on how they calculate it in that year.
Okay.
So it could be significant. When you look at, say, 10, 15 students even.
Yeah, so I don't think we have anybody in the district and their sole job is devoted to attendance. And it seems like that's a position that could pay for itself. If we had someone that solely, because like if an elementary school has a kid out for 50 days, let's say, I mean, it's kind of up to that principal to take the initiative and let y'all know, hey, after 30 days, like this is a major problem. And then it's current staff taking on, who already have current duties going out and engaging that kid, is my understanding, or that family. And it seems like that might be a position that could almost pay for itself. If
Correct, but I will tell you, a child that's been absent for 30 days in a row isn't
I'm not
going to
saying
be
in a
on
row.
roll.
I'm talking about, it's April.
Right.
And we've had a kid that's been out for 50 days for the year. And if you had somebody that's solely devoted to attendance and it's November, they've been out 10 days, you could just do targeted, much more targeted, their sole job is attendance. But my question is that something that could pay for itself? An attendance position, so to speak.
From the parent side commenting, I know it gets a little more intense as they age in school a little bit, because you will dedicatedly have someone call your phone at about 9:03 a.m. if your child is not in school on that day. And I guess the joking part of it, but in all seriousness, they do a pretty good job of tracking that and reporting that up through the administration. I know to the extent of the administration that's sitting in front of us right now, and they will go do home visits. I guess the only thing I would caution us to consider is just what arm of enforcement we think they would have in that position that we don't already utilize through the chain now. If there's some ideas for that, I'd be more than open to it, but I don't know what they would do to enforce it that we're not doing, I guess is my question.
I think we need to move in the direction of a legislative item to put more expectations on parents to get their children to be in school, to attend school.
But you can't criminalize it.
Well, no, but
So
they're,
what are you going to do? from
Well,
a
I mean,
legislative perspective?
well.
Well, there already is. I mean, if the attendance officer that works for the state, when it's reported and it's required to be reported, she can actually, there is a fine, there is actually, they can spend time in jail for not having their child in school if they are compulsory school age. It's a matter of going through that process. I will tell you, it's not done very often.
Yeah.
But like at the secondary schools, there's a whole clerk that's their entire job is attendance. They don't do anything else. You know, they may answer the phone and those types of things, but their whole job is attendance, which is calling parents and making sure those things are handled on that end.
And there's an administrator that's also designated at the secondary level that manages attendance as well and
Right.
keeps track of those reports. But, I mean, anything else would help. Our SROs are more inclined to do that kind of work now and go do home visits and checks on students. We also are housing the state attendance officer at Gautier High School this year, giving them an office and a phone line so that we have more close contact with them.
Yeah,
They have generally not been as effective as our own methods of trying to get children in school, though.
Yeah.
And it does matter if the superintendent or the teacher. And conferences we've attended, last year we were at the ILN convention in Starkville. I'll be going back this year. But the keynote speaker talked about the most important thing that we can do as educators is whenever a child's out of your classroom, that educator reaches out to that parent and that child. Because a lot of kids who don't come back to school because they don't think anybody cares if they're at school. And so that's why we put such an emphasis on parent contacts and home visits like we do.
And I pulled up school status. Every day we get a report when school's in session. We get a report that says how many kids were absent and how much it potentially cost the district. And that's a tentative dollar amount. But it basically, one kid every day is $18 is what it costs the district. So,
And I guess what I'm asking also is, what can we do more? And from a budgetary standpoint, to address the attendance issue? Because is it right now is what's happening that if a kid misses school, then the parent receives a phone call, they may or may not answer, and then it goes 2 days, and then it goes 4 days, and then it goes 6 days.
Yeah, if they
At
get
some point in
after a
time,
certain number, they get dropped from the rolls.
And I will tell you, my principals, I can only speak to mine, but if they haven't heard from a child within usually 2 days, 3 at the max, they're doing a home visit, they're trying to find out what's going on with that child. For those types of reasons, simply, a parent not answering the phone, that may work for one day, but that's not going to work for multiple days in a row. Just knowing why the child's out.
And it's routine for principals to contact me, to contact parents, or to go visit parents about their children's attendance. And I know that's not really my responsibility, but it is my responsibility to go out there and try and figure out what's going on with our kids. And the weight of the office also helps whenever an assistant superintendent, or principal shows up at your doorstep and says, hey, we really need your child to be in school, please help us. And most parents will help, but there are some chronic absenteeism issues. There are a lot of variables out there that impact student attendance.
And there's academic teeth to absenteeism as well, as far as overall grades go and repetition of grades. We had just momentary confusion when Keeley had that procedure this year. I think we talked about it at a work session before, but even she in all honors classes with all A's still got a letter home that second week that said, one more of these and you will fail every one of these classes and you'll repeat this grade. And so you have that looming there as well. There's those teeth to it also. It's, I know, announced at the football games to all the parents multiple times over each time we have an athletic event, the importance of attendance. I think that is one area I will say I feel like by and large from a local level to the district office go above and beyond what most would consider requirements.
Yeah, and honestly, the days of the punitive measures, while they work in a limited basis, it's more of solution-driven. And when we provide solutions, it goes back to going back to the Calmer issue where we had some children misbehaving at Calmer. There wasn't one person that I went to their home and made a threat of any kind to. I asked them, please help me to help your child to be successful. We're here this is a solution to keep us from having to be punitive. So please help us, and here's how you can help. You always have to have an answer for people whenever they come in, but they need to know that we care as much as anything else. But anything that you'd like to, there's the SRO. The most effective people we have are SROs as it relates to already have relationships in the communities, knowing the communities like the back of their hands so you don't have a lot of wasted time. And they're specifically trained to go out and engage parents and talk to parents. And we have some really good-mannered SROs whenever it comes to communicating with parents.
Yeah, and all that sounds great to me, and I'm not suggesting that y'all work very hard, because I know you do, I just recall that there was frustration at the attendance level in this spring. And it's dollars that we're losing.
Right.
So I just ask, consider what can we do more? So next spring, we're not frustrated with attendance limits, because it's something from the budgetary standpoint, we may get that money back. That's what. A couple other comments are getting some additional help in the public relations department. I've mentioned that in the past. It's just a whole lot for the director of communications to just handle all on our own. And I just think that if we could have some additional help there.
Well, and I think we're at a point now where we probably need to look at a minimum of a temporary person that we can do some contract work with. And we talked about Miss England's situation. She does intend to return, but it is a strenuous responsibility. So we can look at doing some contract work for a little while, and then determine where we are after about 2 months on it. If you are in agreement with that, that's something I can do as a service as superintendent. You'd have to ratify it, but I can do that work to get someone in here. And we've been picking up those pieces a little bit, but there's a lot of work there. And we try to do a lot to support the public. The free video that's put out for the graduation ceremony that's uploaded to YouTube, that's been done. That's a free service of the district. The free digital pictures that the parents receive is another way for parents to be able to access pictures of their children. But it is comprehensive. And I agree, we do need to get some extra help in here right now, for sure. And then we'll look at it from a budgetary standpoint. We've got a little bit of time between now and then to look at somebody we could hire in to help.
A couple more. So tuition policy, we had mentioned that before. That's something that's not going to be feasible for August. I mean, we realize that. We get that. But I guess it could be potentially feasible for January. I don't know from a budgetary standpoint whether y'all would want to consider that for the budget or not. Just an FYI.
Yeah, we just need to
discuss.
Yeah, we've been discussing it internally, and the big thing is setting the right number, getting our right number there.
Yeah.
And we've seen all the policies of all the districts that have, but I also want to make sure that we're not inviting people to buy their way in that have children with behavior issues and attendance issues. And the other issue is a lot of times when people transfer over, getting their kids to school on time has been an issue. But that's something that we'll definitely have as an option on there.
And I would like to commend y'all. I think recently y'all did the exterior, I guess it's almost like school spirit that you see it driving by these schools. And I think that was nice. It seemed like it was recent from some very recent budgets, but I think that's a good thing. And I think it'd be good to continue that type of stuff. There's some exterior facades that don't look great. All of our schools look very good when you walk in them,
Right.
but they're all on lockdown and the public doesn't see them.
Right.
The interior, by and large. And the facades of some of the schools they're not inviting. They just don't look, they don't show off what's going on inside the doors. And so if there's I think there's a few schools that maybe if there's some quick fixes to increase the facades of some of them.
And just so you know, we've hired in this summer some young people that are in college that are going to specifically be doing pressure wash work. That's solely to get some of the different areas of the building, especially around cafeterias. But it's very visible here at Trent Live because it backs up to our office. And East Lawn, I know, has been another concern about the way the brick sets up and the planters in the front. But I did want to mention two other things before we move on. The parking area outside of the gym at Trent Lot, we're ready to move forward with that. That money's been budgeted by the board. We can go ahead and put all of our limestone in there. And we have paving money from the county. We'll be able to have that parking lot ready, we hope, for the fall of next year, striped off. Could be up to 50 parking places, which will be a big help for that area. We're looking at purchasing the property, which is across the street here. Once we find out from the city if they'll allow us to use it. Our intent is to remain a green space with 45-degree parking along the roadside. So we'd be able to potentially add 20 more parking spaces here. That's not a real big deal all the time, but during registration time, during board meeting nights where we have a big issue, that would be a great addition for us. And we do have that contract. We're working through the contract now. Any other questions? All right, so guys, if you would, I know you don't have everything out now, but if you think about what are some of the things you want to see, I know the air conditioning listing, I know all the things you're saying now, but when you're thinking about those things as you're riding around, if y'all don't mind, shoot an email to me, copy to Ms. Grin, and so we can get that down as a list of projects to do or work on, or because sometimes we're able to do things during the course of the year with different pots of money. So we'd like to get that list from you if we could.
Any questions? Need a motion to adjourn? The motion by Mr. Wilson, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.